Because the Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey has begun this media conference in Canberra.
We now have confirmation that the government is totally confused about whether it believes in company tax cuts or not. Wayne Swan said on the 15th of May that he's made it very clear from the very beginning that the government still has company tax cuts on the agenda. And Penny Wong has now confirmed in estimates that the Labor Party has dumped as policy and does not have on the agenda company tax cuts. So if the Treasurer and the Minister for Finance can't agree on whether the government is committed to company tax cuts, it only adds to the sovereign risk associated with this government. And speaking of sovereign risk, it is immensely disappointing that this morning the government again used the numbers in Parliament to close down any debate about the increase in the debt limit to $300 billion. The government invited us to create a kerfuffle on budget night, which we were not prepared to do, in order to debate debt. We have now sought on a number of different occasions to separately debate the government increasing the debt limit from $250 billion to $300 billion. They are ignoring a 1953 piece of legislation that allows them to increase the debt limit during the course of the year to address market needs. But this government's ignoring that and instead is increasing the debt limit, and every time they have, they've broken it. We'll continue to pursue debt because it's a very significant issue, and if we're closely monitoring the sovereign risk associated with debt in other countries, then Australia should be no exception. There is great irony that in a parliament that was promising greater transparency and the capacity to let the light shine in, that at the end of the day the independents just keep voting to close down debates on issues that are of significance to everyday Australians. Any questions?
No,
at the end of the day they had the opportunity in the second reading debate to vote on the substantive motion. So they voted in favour of us having a right to speak, but at the end of the day they don't support us when it comes to the substantive motions in relation to that. So that's very disappointing.
Mr. Hockey, you're a sportsman of some repute. Did you consider making for the door as well this morning?
No, well, what happened was we got very late notice that Mr Thompson was voting for us. As soon as Christopher Pyne made it known that he was voting with us, we endeavoured to make sure that we honoured our promise. And this is very important to us. It's very important that you keep your promises. And Tony Abbott promised we would not accept Craig Thompson's vote, and that's why we wanted to make absolutely sure that he was not going to have his vote honoured on our side of the parliament, and that's why we pulled a vote from our side. And that was a practice in relation to Mal Colston. And I understand that Mr Thompson's saying that when it comes to these gag motions, he's going to vote against the gag as an independent. But he's voted in favour of the gag as an independent on 5 occasions. So quite clearly this has been a set-up from the government, and if they think that somehow they win out of this, it just shows the dysfunctional nature of the parliament under this government in a partnership with Craig Thompson.
Could someone on your side have realised earlier what was going on? You said you got late notice that he was there.
Well, I was only witness to Christopher coming over and saying he's on our side and we have an obligation to honour it. And Tony, to his great credit, I mean, Tony Abbott is a stickler for keeping to his promises, and he said, we're out of here, you know, because he wanted to make sure that there's no way that we would accept Craig Thompson's vote at the same time as we're calling for Julia Gillard not to accept his vote.
But on that first gag motion, it's recorded, Mr Abbott's name's recorded.
Well, there was a technical debate about whether he had left the chamber in time. And,
but the Hansard shows you accepted Mr Abbott.
Well, once someone is actually in the chamber, there's an argument about when their vote counts. You'll need to raise that with the Deputy Speaker.
So you don't think it's an embarrassing...
I must say, just a second, let me finish that one. because the Deputy Speaker ruled that he was still in the chamber, and there's controversy about whether that vote counted or not.
So do you have no confidence in the Deputy Speaker?
Yep.
Well, are you going to follow that through, and how are you going to follow it through?
Well, we still traded off his vote, Mr Thompson's vote. So it was an extra, we wanted to make extra sure at that moment. Sorry?
Pyne was the negation.
Pyne was the one, Christopher Pyne was the one that left the chamber in order to make sure, and Tony wanted to make absolutely sure, because of course when you have pairing arrangements you want to make sure there's no doubt about the fact that we did not accept Craig Thompson's vote. And it was a stunt from Labor. I mean, apparently they tipped off the media beforehand, so, you know.
Mr Hockey, given that there's footage of three of the members of the opposition benches, front benches, bolting for the door, I mean, wouldn't you say that this is sort of an unedifying spectacle from the public's point of view?
Well, look, it would be, from my perspective and the perspective of the coalition, it's unedifying to break a promise. Julie Gillard does it all the time, we don't. And when Tony Abbott made a solemn promise that he would not accept Craig Thompson's vote, we wanted to make absolutely sure that promise was honoured. We stand by what we promised. Full stop.
It's a bad look for the opposition, though?
Oh, look, you guys, there's lots of people that pass commentary on that. You know, there are cameras in the chamber. You know, we get late notice. It was part of a stunt from the government. The bottom line is that the debt limit is going to be increased to $300 billion, and the government's closing down debate about it.
Mr Hockey, it was more
I mean, that is a significant issue. You know, about the exits from the chamber, let me tell you, the government has closed down yet again a debate. They closed down the Thompson debate. They closed down the debate about debt limits. Let's go to the heart of it. They are closing down important debates in the House of Representatives. And this is meant to be a more transparent parliament. I mean, I don't know how Rob Oakeshott and Tony Windsor live with themselves about this, continually closing down any substantive debate on issues that really matter.
The debt ceiling has been likened to Tea Party tactics by both the government and the Greens. Do you accept that criticism?
No, they don't understand what they're talking about. They don't understand that they've got their own 1953 legislation that allows them, during the course of a financial year, to increase above the existing debt limit to deal with movements in the market. But even if they don't, why didn't Wayne Swan challenge the advice from the Australian Office of Financial Management? I don't understand a treasurer who simply gets advice, doesn't challenge it, and then releases that advice as if, well, they advised me to do it, so I did it. Why don't you actually challenge? Well, we're going to challenge them in estimates about that. We're going to ask them questions about it because...
Is there a reason why we should challenge it?
Yes, there is, because fundamentally, every time we give the government an increase in the debt limit, they blow it. So, you know what, we're like a bank that is sick of giving someone who is addicted to spending an increase on their credit card. We are tired of giving this government an increase on the debt limit that every time they seem to breach. Enough.
Mr. Hockey, a couple of weeks ago you said that it'd be hard to resist Craig Thompson's vote if he were to support you in censuring the government. Tony Abbott now says that you won't accept his tainted vote. So if Mr Thompson were forced to take leave from the Parliament on compassionate grounds, would you pair him?
We don't give pairs to independents.
Tony Abbott has used a speech today.
The government is about to announce, apparently, the Parliamentary Budget Office.
Hooray!
Can you give us a sense of what use you would make of that and what limitations you put on it?
Well, we will make use of it. We actually had a large number of proposed amendments to the Parliamentary Budget Office legislation. I thought they were amendments that were very worthwhile, and maybe one day Labor will be in opposition and they'll think they'll really regret they didn't support those amendments, I would suspect. But we will work with the Parliamentary Budget Office within the framework that I've outlined. We will send policies where it's appropriate to the Parliamentary Budget Office, ask them to provide advice on it. But we're very keen to find out who the key personnel are, and if they are independent and honourable people, then we will use that Parliamentary Budget Office as a very positive initiative.
So you're giving a commitment to submit your election promises to the Parliamentary Budget Office?
Oh, we'll give some policy. You know, the question is, when is it up and running? Don't forget it. The government, just a minute. The government has said that they have to enter into memorandums of understanding between the Parliamentary Budget Office and departments and agencies. Given how long it's taken simply to set up the Parliamentary Budget Office, which is now at least 14 months late, we'll be waiting to see what capacity they have to actually properly cost policies.
In Tony Abbott's speech today, he's made a concession that there are elements of the carbon tax that, quote, will be difficult to undo. Is that a concession that if the coalition does win the next federal election, that it may not be able to wind back the carbon tax completely?
No.
Has he spoken to you
you disagree with Tony Abbott's comments there?
No.
Has he spoken to you about what elements would be hard to wind back?
We've talked at length about a number of things.
Well, which elements do you think would be hard to roll back?
Well, we will deliver. We will repeal the carbon tax.
All right, but
Which
what
elements?
Okay, in full. Carbon tax in full.
So Tony Abbott wasn't speaking the truth there?
I'm not going to rely on your interpretation of what Mr Abbott says. Thanks. Anything else? Good. Thank you.
So that was the Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey live from Canberra on the debate about the government efforts to lift the debt ceiling, and also explaining that sprint for the doors in the House of Reps this morning when it became apparent that crossbench MP Craig Thomson was voting with the coalition.